everybody, welcome to episode 78 of the Is That Normal podcast, and today we're going to talk about daughters, and you should be an expert because you've got a few of them.
I am outnumbered at my house, so even with a large family, I'm outnumbered. I've got 4 daughters and a wife, so I live with 5 women every day of my life, and my sons. You know, my oldest son, he's gone all the time. That's his. But my 13-year-old, it's tough for him.
Yeah.
So
what is one thing that you have had to deal with, like that's a crisis in your house related to having daughters that you never expected?
Oh, that I never expected.
Yeah, something that maybe
there's lots of happen that so there's always a coin toss of who's going to be the last one out, but it's not going to be one of the guys. You know, the house we're going somewhere. Yep. Who's going to spend the most time in the bathroom? Yeah, all of those kind of things. So unexpected. I would think that an unexpected thing I've had to deal with. Well, I guess I just didn't think about, I know watching culture and the way girls treat each other, sometimes girls can get a little bit like tense with each other, and, maybe we would use the word catty. I don't know if I can even say that or not, but I guess I just didn't think about it in our household. You know, I can see tension between boys and girls. I expected that, but the tension between the girls and what it's over and about usually is really, really unique. And so, I just didn't quite expect that, because we've got age ranges, so, but you still see like this, I don't know if it's exactly jealousy, but just that tension of wanting to be, to be important and valued and loved, but it'll go from like the oldest down to the youngest. Like, it's not just the ones that are close to each other. There's a little bit of competition. There's the word I'm looking for. The competition between the girls.
And for us as guys, it's definitely easy to see that there's a very significant difference in the way guys handle conflict and the way that girls
100%.
do.
So, we talk about this like all the time. Like I said this literally yesterday, I think, or the day before. It's like, us guys, we would have punched each other and then been best friends again already. And this is just like, you guys don't talk about it, and you just let it go on and fester, and it covers everything for weeks and weeks until we don't even know what we're fighting about anymore. But, you don't like each other. So just punch each other. Wait, no, that's not good advice. No. That's not good advice.
That's not good advice. But like you said, for guys, it tends to be like we explode and then, move past it.
But you guys want to play Call of Duty? And then that's what happens next. So
exactly.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as we talk about daughters, and that's kind of our subject today, what are some of the hopes that you have for your daughters?
Oh man, obviously, and this is true for both of my genders of kids, but my greatest desire for them is to know Jesus and to understand how He views them, because for boys and girls, they both have this problem, but it's different. But for girls, it seems like just their view of themselves, what the culture tells them about themselves, is just so negative and so unhelpful and so unhealthy. But if they could understand how Jesus looked at them, I think it could change everything. And so I have such a desire for them to grow into women who don't have to wrestle with this self-image, undervalued thing that I see happen so often. I want them to be loved for who God has made them to be. And so that also leads me to, while they're under my household, to be the best man I can be in their life, because I want them to see what a godly man, how he should treat them and how he should value them and how he should speak to them and model that. Because, and we'll talk about this later in the episode, but one day I expect that some other guy will come and want to take them away, but I want them to see what that guy needs to be like by me being that guy in their life right now.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, it is. It's tough.
I feel my heart.
There's a ton of responsibility in that.
It is.
So,
it is.
So with all of those things you talk about, how do we navigate that?
It's very carefully, because again, I'm a guy, and my wife is very much involved in this, and we'll talk about how that works. And really, my wife should probably be telling these stories, but I've got to be careful to recognize all the nuances of what it is for them to be grown into women and how I relate to them. And so it takes a lot of forethought to do that. And so that's actually what I want to talk about today, because my wife actually bought a book and read it and shared it with me, called 5 Conversations That You Must Have with your daughters, written by a lady named Vicki Courtney. And she's got some great ideas to help us navigate some of those difficult things that we need to make sure we address with our daughters in order to help them grow into the women they need to be, and for us to be the kind of parents they need us to be in their life.
Well, welcome to the Is That Normal podcast, and as we said, we're on episode 78, and we would if you haven't already, we'd love for you to follow us and check out some of our supplemental posts and things that we do, and you can do that through our Facebook page. You can follow us on our website, isthatnormal.org, and just check out some of the stuff that you're always posting in between episodes. We've got a lot of good content and just some tidbits and things that maybe either tie back to some of our, tie back to an episode, or maybe we just feel like is great content or things that are helpful. So be sure and check that out. And so again, we're talking about daughters today and how to successfully parent our daughters and raise them in a way to help them develop into who God wants them to be. And so you said that you navigate parenting your daughters carefully. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So I like this quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson. He says that life, it's not the destination, it's the journey. And
that should be on a t-shirt.
It should be. I'm sure it probably is somewhere. So but I love that because it reveals the tension, right? Yeah. So that, because again, as parents, a lot of times we think we're trying to make a product, but that's not exactly true. Yeah. We're trying to walk through life with people who are complex and diverse and at different stages of spiritual and emotional and physical maturity. And we need to just be there and be through that. But that also means that it's not all nice and neat and tidy, that we don't wake up and plug our algorithm in the morning and everything works well. Like there's all this give and take that's going on. And so we've got to let our children, particularly our young women, learn and live and try things. And so to do that, you have to be ready to have discussions whenever they need to happen, be sensitive to that and figure out when you give direction and when you kind of let them wander a little bit. When do you want to challenge them to reflect on things that have happened or reflect on things that they want their future to be like. And then sometimes you just have to pick them up and dust them off and cry and laugh with them. And so it takes a myriad of things, and it's there's no formula for that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And you referenced a book earlier that your wife had found and that you've read that has some good suggestions on kind of how to navigate that journey.
Yes. Yeah. So 5 conversations that you must have with your daughter. And and it's really not what you'd expect. It's not necessarily even really exactly questions you're asking them. It's just 5 kind of big overarching topics that are all about the foundations of what it means to be human, and particularly to be a woman. And so here's some of the 5 topics. Here's the 5 topics that they address in this book. One is don't let culture define you. So that's a conversation we need to be, and all of these conversations are things that we need to be having, but in different venues with different angles at different times. And so it needs to constantly be a part of our process. But don't let culture define you. Guard your heart. Know that there's so many things that affect your emotions and your inner view of yourself, and you've got to guard that. Respect your body and your sexuality. And there's a way that you're made, a way that you're designed. And there's also a way that your body responds to things that it's designed to do. And you've got to be having those conversations with your daughters, maybe particularly more than your boys, about all the effects and the consequences and the places that this is going to take you, so that they're ready for some of the things they're going to face in their life. Also realizing childhood is only for a season. That'll be fun part as we talk through this, because the big buzzword for like the last 5 years has been adulting with young people, and so there's a fear of becoming an adult, but childhood has to end. We have to become adults, and we have to talk about that to get there. And then lastly is knowing that you are who you have been becoming, which is huge. As you think about all the consequences of what that means. Like, okay, so this is not about who you want to become, it's about who you are already becoming and what that means for your next steps. So those are kind of the 5 things that she says we need to always be talking about.
Yeah. So let's pick those apart just a little bit, and
Yeah.
maybe talk about some specifics and some ideas from that.
Yeah. So that first conversation, about not letting culture define you, that's about defining beauty. So Randall, how would you give me some ideas of how culture right now is defining beauty? Like what does that mean?
Really, obviously, a certain look and a certain, usually an imitation of certain examples of what our culture holds up as beauty, and you have to look a certain way, you have to do a certain thing, you have to, and so, and all of which are usually very much unattainable.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting. So, there's a list out of the highest grossing YouTube channels, every year. And when you look at the top 10 highest grossing, which all of these people are making not millions, but tens of millions of dollars off of YouTube every year. Those people, of the top 10, there's usually, 40 or 50% of them are makeup tutorials, which is crazy. And I know my daughters, they're always my 2 oldest ones, they're always watching videos and learning new ways to put on makeup. And there's this, and that's a worldview. That's a communication about what beauty is as we absorb what the culture says. This is what you have to do. This is the products you have to buy. This is the body type you need to be. All of these things about what beauty needs to be. Now, I did see something funny this week though, Randall. So I saw a meme, and it had this really sturdy looking woman who was holding some wild game that she'd caught in her hands, and it said, as the end of the world nears, survival skills may outpace outer beauty for the characteristics you're looking for in a wife. So so that has changed. The definition of beauty changes based upon what's going on in your culture.
Find you a woman that can break the neck of and skin an animal.
That's right. So this may change, as our world changes, but really, we need to help our daughters redefine what beauty is based upon what God says, because God's the one who made us. He created us. He's the one who's allowed to set a standard of what beauty is, and so we need to help them define that. And we got to realize that there are some common things that are going to interrupt that process. There's some things that, whether it be the influence of peers, the influence of media, the just the inner voices that we have that we allow to get too loud in our life. There's going to be things that interrupt that. We have to help them identify that. So how is your media consumption affecting your view of beauty? Is that healthy? What can we do what voices can we listen to that are going to give us a healthier view of beauty? Just talking them through some of those pieces. What are your friends doing to try to be more beautiful? How's that working out for them? What is that attracting? So if we try to present this view of beauty, what is that going to attract? Is that the attention you want? Is it the type of people you want the attention from? Is this the outcome you're looking for? And so you have that conversation over time, helping them develop a different view of beauty.
And I think one of the things you said was key there in that, you're not saying, hey, completely, that it's impossible to completely cut out all of these other influences and voices. But I think the key there is the awareness of this is one point of view, or this is, and acknowledging how that's affecting us, as opposed to, being completely consumed and believing this is the only way, and not recognizing the impact that maybe it has on our kids. Yeah.
So, and then the second conversation, which is about the guard your heart part, this is really about mental health and relationships, which is, biggest deal ever. I'm reading a book right now that we'll, I'm sure, review here sometime in the near future, but it's from Fuller Youth Institute, and they've researched what are the biggest questions that teens are asking right now, and by far, the very top, most often asked question is how do I deal with my anxiety and my depression? Mental health is just, we've talked about this before, but it is a huge, huge thing. And again, it goes back to voices. What voices are we allowing to control our views and thoughts and beliefs? What am I listening to? Who am I listening to? What's shaping that? And friends are a big part of that process. And one of the things that she points out in the book that I think is really important for us, and particularly moms out there of daughters to understand, is that as our young girls turn into adolescent women, they begin to pull back, and particularly pull back from their mother. And they're going to begin looking for for peers to give them more time and attention and affirmation, and that's natural. That's normal. That's a part of our development, and that's healthy. But we also have to be there to help navigate that. And so we have to have a lot of good conversations, and we have to listen a lot. I know at my house, particularly with my older girls, I often catch my wife, just various times of the day, whether it's that she's wandering in the girls' room and the girls are wandering in the kitchen, and they're just sitting down and they're talking about what's going on with the girls' friends. And they just, and my wife just asks a question, and then she sits and listens. And then she asks a question, then she sits and listens. And, and through that, you're finding out what's going on in their heart. You've also created a safe space because you're not in there saying, "Hey, I want to talk to you about how terrible your friends are." You're letting them just reflect. And as we let them reflect, man, you will just hear all sorts of amazing things. And you'll find out that they're asking questions, about their friends, about what's healthy, about, how to make, their friendship relationships better. They'll talk to you about struggles they're having. And then you're able to kind of nudge and help and shape as you do that. But you gotta be willing to do that work of sitting and listening. And, our goal should always be to offer a safe place and an umbrella of protection for them. And we talk about this with our kids and our daughters a lot, is that, we're here to help you. And while you're under our roof, we want to help protect you from things that we know are going to harm you. And so we want this to be a place where you can come and talk to us about what you're dealing with. But I also want you to know that when we offer you advice, it's not because we're trying to control you. It's because we're trying to protect you. And we're going to try to help you set up healthy boundaries, which we're going to be talking about boundaries in an upcoming episode, which will be really good to help. And our daughters need to understand some of those things. So, yeah. And then that third conversation, which is respecting our body and sexuality. Man, this is maybe the uncomfortable one for some of us in here, but it is so necessary. And we did a whole episode several months ago about how do you talk about sex with your kids. And so we'll put a link in there, and definitely had a lot of ideas in there. I think that'd be good to go back and revisit. But one of the things in the book I thought that she did that was really good, and she's kind of got this section where she breaks down ages, birth to this age and this age to this age, just of first of all, what your daughters are experiencing and asking typically, like what an average girl of that age is asking and experiencing. And here's some things you should talk about, because there's an age appropriateness of when to talk about things, but we don't want to just, which I've seen and heard people do, we wait until we think they've already hit puberty. We go in and have do you know how that stuff all works? All right, good. And I mean, that's the sex talk, right? And so we need to be working on that conversation as they age appropriately, because the goal is not just to understand the physics of all of that happens with the sexual act, but to understand the emotions and the reasons and the outcomes and all of these things, and that those emotions start early, and we need to start helping shape that. And so, but you've got to be sensitive though. And so she does a really good job of kind of pointing some of that stuff out there.
And we've talked about before, as we've kind of talked about this subject, is that every kid is a little bit different, and so there's some good guidelines there. But ultimately, not every kid is going to be at the exact same point, at the exact same age or spot. Right. And so, a little bit of that is being able to understand and know, your child and where they're at in that process.
I definitely know that in every area of conversation with my kids, what we want to do is always help them decide and paint the picture of what they want their future to look like. And in this sex talk, I think that's so important as they get into late middle school and into high school, is to have that discussion of your sexual choices are going to impact the rest of your life, because of what this does to your emotions, what this does to your body, the possibilities of what happens in those acts. And so we want you to paint the picture of the future you want to have, and realize that the boundaries that need to be set are to protect you from ruining that future that God wants for you, that you want for you, and that we want for you. And so we do a lot of those kind of talks. And so if this one really stresses you out, I just want to say, just start somewhere. You've got to open the conversation. It will be uncomfortable, but you've got to do it. So
absolutely.
And then, the fourth one, like I said, man, that's really interesting. So why don't you describe adulting for me? What's that term mean to kids today? Yeah.
Yeah, it's become a popular hashtag, representing what maybe a young person, when they do something they feel like is, represents an adult act, whether that's,
Right.
Buying a vehicle or doing something they feel like is
Right.
responsible, an adult thing to do. So then the fun hashtag.
I just adulted.
I just adulted. Yeah, it's a verb that describes doing something that is associated with becoming an adult.
Yeah, and under that is that just that that message of first of all, I'm afraid of going there. I'm afraid of messing it up, and I'm not sure I want to leave childhood yet. And that's pushing later and later. We've talked about that. That 28 is kind of the new 18, but 30 can't be the new 20. And so,
Right.
so there's all these tensions in that. But what we are wanting to always communicate to our daughters is that, there's a point where you're going to launch.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you need to do to get ready for that? We're here to support you, and we're here to help you, but eventually you're going to have to launch. And what do you need to do to get ready to that? And so, so we do a lot of talking about our own stories, things that went well, things that didn't go well. We've talked a lot about how our goals have changed. When I graduated high school and what I thought life was going to be like and what I know it's like now, vastly different.
Yeah.
And so we've asked our daughters a lot to consider. You're going to probably want to be a wife someday, and you're probably going to want to be a mother someday,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay. It's okay to say that those are things
Yeah.
that you want. It's okay for you to imagine what that might look like. And it's okay for you to make choices now that are going to help support that decision. Because I know that family is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Family is, in many ways, way more important than what I do for a job all day long.
Yeah.
Because this is, family is what is going to pass on the next generation. Family is what we value the most. It's who we want to do life with. And so to make choices and imagine what it's going to look like to be a part of a family is really good and really healthy. And I'm not sure that daughters, girls in our culture get that part of that story very often. And we as parents really need to make that an okay discussion. That doesn't mean you can't, that we don't want you to go to school and be brilliant and be successful and change the world and all, I mean, great. Those things are great, but know that there's a component of this, and your decisions on what you do next is going to impact all of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And part of that too, man, like I said, there's this like 28's the new 18 and like everything's getting so murky, and so many kids, more and more, we've just seen this sliding scale of waiting later and later for marriage, waiting later and later for serious relationships. But what happens because of that is there's usually physical relationships that happen. If we wait too long, cohabitation has gotten to be just the norm. Mm-hmm. And we've got to talk to them about, not only is that something that the Bible says we shouldn't do, which is important to understand, but it's also important to understand why the Bible says not to do that. Like, what are the consequences of that? The fact that the percentage of people who get divorced after having lived together before marriage is like astronomically larger. And why is that? Well, it's because you didn't start this off with a commitment and a decision and safety and security, which is what a woman is looking for. And even if the guy's committed, she's gonna have this baggage of, well, what if he did this with me? What if he does this with someone else? So there's all sorts of issues, and so we just have to be open to kind of talk through all of that with our daughters.
And it's one of the things about our culture is a lot of the things that really can have significant impacts on the rest of our lives have. In a lot of ways, our culture has said these things aren't that important. And on the flip side of that, things that our culture says, these are the things that are important, are the things that really maybe don't have that significance. And we've got everything's flipped around backwards as far as talking about priorities and what our culture says you should focus on, what's important to think about. Yeah,
absolutely. So, and then the last one is who you have been becoming, which is a fun question to ask. Right? So who do you think you have been becoming? Mm-hmm. Not who do you want to be, but who have you been becoming? And so just ask that might be a great place for everyone to start this week, is just sit down with your daughter and say, who do you think it is that you've been becoming? and let them answer that question, and they'll wrestle with it, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But that's a good question, and but this journey, wherever you're at, whatever you've been becoming, it is gonna result in a destination. You're gonna become somebody. You're gonna do something. But what is it that you've been becoming? And so we challenge our girls to check their path often. We try to help our daughters check their path often. So how are you progressing in your emotional health and your relational health, and how are you treating your sisters, and how are you viewing yourself, and what do you think beauty is like, and what do you think a family needs to look like? We just check those pathway points all the time.
Yeah. And
just have those conversations, and we talk about like how do you define beauty, and what does it look like to be a woman, and all of these things. And Proverbs chapter 31 has this beautiful list at the end of it about what a godly woman looks like. And that may be something you just need to sit down with your daughters this week and read through, and then evaluate, because it says things in there that we maybe don't expect. And as you read through that list and you evaluate that, you're just asking, like, what would that look like in our culture? Why do you think that's what God asks a woman to be, and how are you growing into those things? And I mean, those are just some really good conversations to help them paint the picture of where God wants to take them.
Yeah. That's a lot. We covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
And so what are maybe a couple of the big takeaways from what we've covered today? Yeah.
So realize that it's a journey and not a straight or an easy path. It's going to be hard. You're going to have some pitfalls. You're going to have some tangents. You're going to have some rabbit trails. Just know that it is going to be hard, but it is worth it. It takes a commitment, and it takes courage. And it's going to include some poor choices and missteps and hard lessons that your daughters are going to learn. But know that we had that too in our life, and we can learn from those, and we want to be there to help them learn. So I just challenge all the parents out there, just do the hard work, have these conversations. But then also remember that you have to trust God for the things that you can't control. These conversations are not about control. They're not about getting your ideas across. It's about helping them reflect, and we need to do that for them. God loves your daughter way more than you do, and wants a future for them way better than the future you have imagined for them. And so we need to daily just put our children into His hands.
Yeah, good stuff. So our two takeaways for today is maybe to either continue or start one of those conversations that we talked about this week. And then the other is to consider checking out Vicki's book, and I know we'll put a link to it, and digging deep and checking out some of those resources that are available.
Absolutely. Be abnormal.